Bluff Park Commissioners as of March 28th, 2022. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Greenfield.
Here.
Commissioner Lane.
Here.
Commissioner Raymore.
Here.
Commissioner Reeder.
Here.
Commissioner Walsh.
Here.
Commissioner Weber.
Here.
President Beeler.
Here. All right. May I ask please for a motion to approve the agenda for this evening?
So moved. Second.
Enthusiastic group. Thank you. Roll call, please, Marcia.
Commissioner Greenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Lane.
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore.
Yes.
Commissioner Reeder.
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
President Beeler.
Yes. We'd like to take this time right now for a statement of visitors. This is for opportunity for folks who are joining us tonight to be able to, citizens to be able to address the board. This is to for any unfinished or continuing business and or new business items. And the agenda is provided. You have 3 minutes per person who would like to speak. Jeff, do you see anybody who would like to be able to address us at this time?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. So we will move on from there to the public hearing for the proposed 2022 budget and appropriation ordinance, which is page 3 of everyone's packet. Okay, John, do you want me to read this aloud or?
Sure. Yeah, you can just start with the number 1 there on page 3.
Will do. I hereby am announcing the public hearing that is open to receive public comments on the proposed B&A ordinance. And it explains that all person desiring to be heard will have the opportunity to present written or oral testimony at this time. I'll ask as well for additional comments from any park commissioners. If there's any written testimony that is to be received, the secretary reads it into the record. As for oral testimony, I will announce that all desiring to be heard will be given this opportunity. And then a motion will be made by a board member and thereafter seconded that the hearing will be adjourned. After discussion, if any, call for the roll vote, and then I declare the motion carried if so performed. So.
I have not received any written testimony.
Okay, is there any, first I should ask, is there any comments from the park commissioners? None. Any oral testimony? Okay, therefore I ask for a board member to make a motion then that the hearing on the proposed 2022 budget and appropriation ordinance then be adjourned.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Greenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Lane.
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore.
Yes.
Commissioner Reeder.
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
President Beeler.
Yes. On our agenda, we have verbal communications. I'll ask the staff first.
I have no verbal communications or updates other than what, mostly what we put in our reports. If there's any questions on those reports, we're happy to answer them at this time.
John, would you like me just to give a little bit of progress of pool memberships and as well as camps for the summer?
Yes, you're right, Jim. I'm sorry. We talked about that earlier. If you can give the board members a bit of an update, that would be helpful.
Sure. So as of right now, pool memberships are at about $35,000 gross revenue compared to, we'll say 2019 numbers. We're running just about the same. We were at 34,000 in 2019. As for camps, we were at 220,000 gross revenue and about 55% filled in 2019. We are at almost 80% filled, and we are at 340,000 gross revenue for camps. So we are definitely on schedule to hopefully meet all of our budgetary needs.
I think another important thing that you mentioned earlier, Jim, that we were talking about, there's been a bit of a increase in fitness as well. There might be a little bit shorter memberships, quarterly memberships, but starting to pick up. Where December and January were a decline, February and March have actually started to increase, which is really, I think, related to the the situation with the COVID variant. But I think it's just a positive indicator, starting to bring some people back into the fitness center.
Yes, and it wasn't in our program guide, but we will be offering a couple of additional programming for fitness. We will be bringing back water aerobics, and that'll be at the pool. We're just trying to coordinate with our aquatic manager, Diane Zavitz, when we're going to schedule that, but that is coming back. We're really excited about it, and we're looking at bringing some additional fitness program down at the beach. And this month coming for April and part of May, you'll see in the board report, we are offering a couple of specials, as well as a raffle for a kayak that will be displayed this week.
What is the raffle to benefit?
Basically, if you sign up for a new membership, or you referral a friend, or you renew your membership this month, you will be part of the drawing for the kayak.
Yeah, just an incentive for the memberships. I know they also have the early the early bird special. We had a line of people in the lobby at 5 o'clock today. People residents in registering for pool passes. So I think it's a very good sign.
I think the promotions are great. Thanks for doing that. I know that seems like it's upticking the fitness center membership with the January and February. And then I like that you guys brought back the Bring the Friends in April on Mondays. So that's awesome. I think it's always good to work out with a buddy. So, and then I was out there working out today. So I just want to say, I think is it Rich, the new trainer? Ron, I'm sorry, Ron. He was awesome. He had a group of I think 14 Silver Fit members out there working the machines, and they were just having a blast. They were moving, doing a circuit out there, and it was really awesome. And that's a big class for a fitness center class. I believe it's 14, could have been 12, but it was definitely at least 12. So anyways, good job with Ron. He's a great addition. He's got a lot of information. I actually asked him for some tips on how to do one pull up, and he was awesome on helping me. So that's my goal, one pull up. So anyways, good job. I'm really excited to see the new people joining the fitness center. I think Ron is a great addition. So
I'll pass it on to him. Thank you.
So it's just nice to see a lot more people there. It was definitely busy this morning. So good job with the promotions. Keep them up. Keep doing the promotion. I think they're really working.
Good.
Yeah, send out that pool pass reminder one more time because I need it.
Did you hear that, Jeff?
I gotta get it before what, Friday?
March
Yes.
31st, it goes up, right?
Okay,
That's
yeah.
right.
Okay,
Yep.
everyone's
Yeah.
been forewarned.
It's on my calendar.
Okay. Good, and baseball season is right around the corner, April 9th. First pitch is being thrown out, no major league strike or minor league strike, so we are on schedule, right? Noah's nodding along, good, he's got everything ready,
Well, but the weather cooperates, hopefully.
if the weather cooperates. All right, anything else from staff? Thank you very much for that update. Finance, Administration, and Future Planning Committee.
Yeah, we met, 2 weeks ago now? It had been several months actually, since we had met once we got over kind of the 2022 budget. We met just to go over little housekeeping notes, talked with Director Beeler about the opening. And then we had a long discussion about, just kind of, overall long-term funding, kind of looking at our capital, reviewing our capital asset list, and kind of going over more our 5-year forecast than our 10-year forecast to try and provide, see if we can find a little bit more wiggle room for any of the larger ticket items that we have open. So ongoing, but a good conversation.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any questions from anybody? No? All right, on to the Parks and Beach Committee, which is me. We had a very helpful and productive meeting. A lot of the agenda items that we had from the Parks and Beach Committee are also going to be covered tonight. But I would like to add that we have a day scheduled in our ravines to coincide with the day after Earth Day, which is April 22nd. So April 23rd, as we said before, will be a cleanup day with Lobola in the ravines. Sue, is there anything else to add with that?
No, I don't think so. We've gotten permits from the village for any tree removal that we'll do. Probably will be happening ahead of the 23rd. And we hope to put a notice in the Lake Bluff Village newsletter. If there's a way to put it in the Park District, that'd be great. And hope to see people out there.
Okay, so that'll be a good way to tend to our ravines, which need tending to and nurturing and more care. We also discussed the beach accessibility project, which I think is just about there. A punch list is done. Please, if you haven't had an opportunity to stand there and look at that gorgeous gate leading down to the beach, please do so. Again, thank you to our senator to get this grant for us, because this really, we've had a lot of folks write into us to be able to say that they were so pleased with the way that the final project blends so well with the way that the beach already looked. So do take a look at that. And then the two other items that we talked about, which are of major interest, the North Shore Water Reclamation and the Sunrise Beach Improvement, those are both going to be for other agenda items for tonight. All right. Facilities and Programs Committee.
We haven't had a meeting. I think it's in the report though, John, with the update. The surge tank, I think that would be just good. I think you were talking about that tonight, right? That's really kind of the only update for the facilities and programs, but we haven't had a committee meeting.
Talking about, I'm sorry, you're talking about the surge tank? Is that what you mentioned?
Yeah.
It's actually the repairs were finished. It's not on the agenda, but the repairs are finished that were approved by the board. So we had hired the contractor, and those repairs are completed at this time. So it's going to help us get the pool ready to open.
Okay. Well, that's good. That was one of our things to get done for the pool. So, and then, yeah, we're going to hopefully get a scheduled meeting. So sent you an email. So hopefully we can get that going. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Friends of the Lake Bluff Parks. Nikki?
You're on mute, Nikki.
Sorry. Friends of the Lake Bluff Parks, we have, I'm trying to remember if I said this, so stop me if you've heard this all before, because our meeting was a long time ago. Our next meeting is actually April 4th, but we have a letter for annual appeal going out soon. People are writing personal notes on that to, kind of get people to, possibly donate. We are still discussing our beach camping event and trying to discuss dates for that and seeing if that's possible or not. That's another fundraiser. Sunrise Rocks fundraiser. I think the date that was currently being tossed around was June 11th. And then we had a pickleball event on the 19th. And then the color run is scheduled for June 18th. We're looking for sponsors and volunteers. If you guys know anybody, please forward them along to anyone on Friends or me. Yeah, and our next meeting is April 4th. I think that's mostly it, other than the beach stuff that we're, just obviously discussing tonight.
Good. Thank you on that. Friends are really working hard to raise money, so they've got a lot of things on their agenda. Good for them. And then any comments from commissioners? Okay, I will give a really quick overview. First off, the negotiations with Gulf Visions continue. As you recall, we approved the ability to continue these negotiations for a proposed contract with Gulf Visions, so that is still underway. On a staff note, as you both may already, or as you all may already know, Don Dahl and Amy Cash are both going to be leaving the Lake Bluff Park District. Their last day is coming up on the 30th of this month. So if you do have an opportunity, Dawn wrote a very nice note to everybody just to say thank you about working with all of us over all of this time. They both have been invaluable to their services to the Park District. So if you do have an opportunity to just drop in and say thanks and goodbye to them, please do so. There is, oh, and one other thing, I was fortunate to have the opportunity to go down to the beach with Noah the other day and talk to a very enthusiastic group of folks who use the beach on a daily basis, come foul weather, come good weather, everything else. They are out there using the beach, and they talked about the migration of the concrete that has been tossed into the lake over many, many years ago, that's now migrating onto our beach shores and into the access areas to the lake itself. What I'd like to be able to do is continue that conversation with them. Obviously, it's a safety issue as well as how it looks on the beach, because it's got rebar in it. It's just not good looking rock. So to be able to continue that conversation with those folks, I did not join them in their daily dip into the lake. But I did get a good education as to what's not good rock on our beach. So hopefully to continue that conversation with them. Any other questions or anything from anybody on the board? No? All right. On to our consent agenda. We have the minutes of February 28th, 2022 from our regular board meeting. I have a motion to approve those minutes. No, Marcia's saying approve the entire thing.
Everything unless there's a question, yeah.
All right, so in our consent agenda, we have the minutes of February 28, 2022. We have the minutes of March 14th, 2022. We have the ACH payments. We have the invoice schedule for ending February 23rd, 2022 through March 23rd, 2022, and the purchase cards as well. First off, I will ask, is there anybody who has any questions on any of these items?
Yeah, a couple. Page 21, we got dinged twice for Tyler Financial Suite Maintenance. Is that an annual thing, or did that just kind of come up off the fly? Because that's about $7,000.
We'll have
It's
to,
It is an annual,
Okay, so that's just our annual hit. We were expecting that.
correct.
Okay, great. Page 25 at the end, we have a copier lease. Is that like do we have 4 copiers, or is that just like a payment for one?
so what we'd have to do is pull that item out of the consent agenda, approve the rest of the consent agenda, and then discuss the.
I could answer that, John. So that was on someone's P card. It was on my P card, and what they weren't doing, they weren't charging the P card. And so we had to catch up on a couple of invoices.
Okay.
So it's for one copier, to answer your question.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's all I had.
Okay. No other questions, comments? Then I'll ask for someone to make a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore,
Yes.
Commissioner Reader.
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Beeler.
Yes. Item number 5 on our agenda, finance. With the month-to-date and year-to-date financial report and summary. John, can I ask you to go into this?
Sure. If there's it starts on page 22. Actually 28 of your packet. You can see the memo that Rich Rothman has put together. And then that goes through page 32 in the packet. So if you have any questions, we may be able to answer those now. If not, and you think of those later, you can always email those. We have Rich is in on Tuesday and Thursday right now until we fill that position. He thought most of the changes, as he explained it, with or variances right now were just timing issues.
And John, you did say that there is a candidate now for the finance position?
There is. So we have that a little bit later on the agenda, but yes, we do have a candidate that we'll talk a little bit about.
Okay. All right. At this time, does anybody have any questions regarding the financial reports that are included as part of our packet? Seeing as none, can I ask for a motion to accept the financial reports as presented?
So moved.
Sue, I think you said something and you're on mute.
Second.
Okay. All right, roll
Thank
call,
you.
please. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore,
Yes.
Commissioner Reader,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Beeler.
Yes. On our agenda tonight is then the ordinance 2022B, the combined budget and appropriation for approval for tonight. Okay. So the Park District submits to the Lake County an appropriation ordinance at the end of the first quarter of the calendar year. This discloses our anticipated revenues, including tax dollars and users fees. And it's the legal document holding the agency accountable to the anticipated disclosed expenditures. John, is there anything further in here that we need to review or discuss?
Not really, just a standard procedure, and so we just need a motion to accept the ordinance.
John, I do have a question. On page 40, it shows us estimated cash on hand at the end of the year in the debt service account as negative. Are there any repercussions associated with that?
That's a good question. Something I'm going to have to. I have to talk to Rich about it in the morning. I can answer with an email, but he didn't indicate that he had any concerns about about this in passing it as presented.
Okay. Just obviously we'll have to make a cash balance or a cash transfer from one, one fund to the other, just in case that is, perceived to be somewhat problematic.
Is this something that is time sensitive that needs to be done tonight, or is this something that we need to, it does need to be done tonight? Okay. And you're saying that the estimated cash on hand with the negative balance does not have a negative connotation?
I remember talking with Rich a while back, and it was expected that that was going to happen. Until he didn't mention a concern about it, I can question him again and definitely answer with an email tomorrow to all the commissioners.
Can we make a motion to approve this, with the, stipulation that that's okay with Rich and that everything is copacetic and that makes sense?
I think you can.
And on page 43, it lists the combined budget, and we have $2.6 million cash on hand at the end of the year.
Right, and that's for the debt service fund that has the negative cash on hand.
Correct. So, from a cash on hand point of view, the $2.6 million, is 100 times the negative cash balance in the debt service fund.
So it shouldn't matter.
I'm not sure it means anything other than at that point in time, there was minus $26,000.
Basically, it shouldn't matter to people what drawer we're keeping our cash in, as long as, we're okay at the end of the day.
And Nikki, that's my takeaway too. I just felt that just needed to voice that and get that on the record and ask the question before we move, any further. I'm perfectly comfortable, with the, indication that we'll have $2.59 million cash on hand at the end of the year. But, John, if you just want to just voice that to Rich and get back with us. Otherwise, I have no problem approving this.
Okay. Because you are signing off on this, Scott.
Correct.
You've got a signature page. Okay.
That's why I took extra care to read it and ask the questions. I don't want anything coming back.
You got it. Okay. Good question raised. Anyone else? All right. So may I have a motion, please? And I assume, John, that we have the language as the motion at the bottom of the packet page?
Yes, that's
Okay.
on page 33.
Yes. Okay. So if someone can make a motion and use the same verbiage that's as recommended by staff.
Sure. I'll make a motion to accept ordinance 2022B and the 2022 combined budget and appropriation ordinance disclosing all necessary expenditures and liabilities in all the district's funds for the calendar year beginning January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2022.
Thank you.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore,
Yes.
Commissioner Reader,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Beeler.
Yes.
Nikki, you're moving up in the world. You don't need to read that verbiage anymore.
But she did have it down pat for a long time.
For sure. Crushed it every time.
Next on our agenda is going to be a task force update. Steve Kraus, who's the chair of the task force committee, is with us this evening. So if Jeff Spillman can work his magic and bring him on at this time, I'd like to, again, I know we sound like we're continually saying the same thing again and again about the task force, but I have to, it bears repeating. These folks that have volunteered to step up for the task force are a brain trust. They are performing a great deal of research. They are taking the time to be able to go through a number of very complex matters and understand terminology. And what I really appreciate is that they are forming a consensus on what they are discussing, so that it's building, it's fact building, it's information building. And that's how they start each meeting. That's how they end each meeting. I'm continually amazed that these folks have the ability to have the resources that they do to bring different speakers to each one of the task force to continue to build on this bank of knowledge. So Steve, thank you for stepping up and sharing this group. And we'd like to hear from you as to what's been going on with the task force, considering all of these videos are up on YouTube. And if anyone wants to take the 2 hours or more to watch each one of them, they're there for everybody to see.
That certainly is an enticing offer for everyone to watch 14 or 15 hours worth of videos. Thank you for inviting me. I'd like to just give a brief summary. We're kind of halfway through our process. I'd like to give a really brief update of what we've done, but more importantly, what we are now going to do in the weeks and months that come. And then I will pause for questions that you might have, questions about the process, about what we're looking to do next, what we've done already, what we're hearing from the community. We've had some good dialogue with community members, which has been great. I start most meetings with two concepts. We are fact finders. And then second, if we do our job, we will be the source of truth on this issue, so that when the public has an opportunity to hear from the task force and ultimately from you, from the board, there'll be a reference document that people can rely on as a definitional, a foundational piece that everyone can agree is correct, that facts are there, that we don't have to have dialogue or misunderstandings around just some basic facts. So that's the goal of our task force. And as Jennifer said, we start each meeting with a review of the important findings from the prior meeting. We are creating a glossary of terms because there are a lot of unusual terms that mean sometimes what you'd expect, but sometimes not quite what you expect. So our final report will have both the important findings as an attachment, but also a glossary that people can refer to. So what have we done so far? We've had 6 meetings. These are all fact-finding meetings. We've listened pretty much exclusively during those meetings. We've listened to engineers, wetland engineers, that talk about what it means to build a wetland, what it means to have a wetland, what it means for stormwater storage. We learned early on, by the way, that the proper terminology, just as an example, is stormwater storage. It's not detention, it's not retention, it's storage. For a simple reason that detention and retention are defined terms in the regulatory framework that is used to establish wetlands and wetland credits. So we're trying to get the terminology right so everybody is operating on the same basis. But we have met with SMC a couple of times. They presented to us, and we do understand their proposal. We understand it very well. We understand the pluses and the potential minuses of that proposal. We've talked with the engineers. We've talked with owners and developers of wetlands. So we've talked with private owners, park districts or townships or others, some of which presented live, some of which we did in the background, but of their experience of dealing with the regulatory agencies, of dealing with wetlands, and especially their motivation for turning a plot of land into a wetland, why they did it, how it worked. And we learned a lot from them. We talked to experts on mitigation banking. So the whole concept of wetland mitigation and wetland mitigation banks is foreign to most of us, since it was foreign to me 4 months ago. I didn't have a clue that this kind of a process actually existed. I think I'm now somewhat of a beginning learner of understanding what it means to be a wetland mitigation banker. We'll get into that in a little bit. And we also looked at golf course financials. We're still finalizing the view, trying to make sure that everyone in the community understands the current condition of the golf course from a financial perspective on a fact base. Our next meeting is a week from tomorrow, and we will delve into, this is our last fact-finding meeting, we'll delve into regulatory frameworks. So if you make a decision to continue to investigate wetlands, if you do, then there are 2 paths that need to be followed. One of the 2, one is governed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the other is governed by the Stormwater Management Commission. They are similar, but not the same. There are advantages and disadvantages of both. So part of our responsibility based on the remit is to understand each of those regulatory protocols and give you a nice table that does the plus and minuses of each. So after next Tuesday, we will be pretty much finished with fact finding, and we will move into analysis and report generation. So on I think it's the 19th of April, we will have our first task force workshop. And that workshop will focus on the first half of the remit, which is your instructions to us, asking us to investigate and fully understand what the Stormwater Management Commission's proposal is and how it may or may not affect both the financials and the aesthetic environment of the golf course and the park district and the park itself. So we're going to do that in an interactive manner. So at the regular task force meeting on the 19th, we will have the 7 questions that you've asked us to answer. We will have I'm working with one of my task force members, and we will have a suggestion of an answer. But what we're really going to be doing is having a dialogue of all of the task force members to coalesce around our perspective on each of those specific questions. That I think the first one will take just 1 meeting. It might take 2. But once we finish the first part of the remit, we'll move into the same part of a workshop, the same concept for the second part, the more complicated part, which is if a wetland is part of this analysis going forward, what does that really mean? And that's going to take probably maybe 2 meetings, workshop meetings, to get those 10 basic questions with 20 or so subpoints. So by the middle of May, we will have gone through fact finding. We will have gone through analysis in an interactive way with the task force members. And as we've been doing periodically during each task force meeting, I ask for input questions, or really clarification questions from the audience. And we typically have a couple of questions. We'll do that again as part of these workshops. So once we're into the month of May, we will begin putting our analysis together. I'll give you the highlights of what we're thinking of for the analysis. We're going to start with a little bit of history of that property. I've discovered there's a lot of misunderstanding about how that property actually got turned into a park and how that park got turned into a golf course. So we're gonna start with Ben Close, the youngest son of the first German settler of Lake Bluff, and his recollection of what that property looked like when he lived here in the 1800s. And we'll move very quickly from that time period into the 1920s to 1950s, a failed subdivision, a movement by the citizens of Lake Bluff to have a bond issue to buy land from a developer and to develop that land as a golf course, and then the iterations that follow. So we'll start with a bit of history of the property, because I think that sets a nice tone. We will have, importantly, a decision matrix or decision support tool. So there are a series of threshold questions that you as a board will need to address as you move through this decision-making process. The first question, obviously, one you've talked about, is whether or not 40 acre-feet of stormwater storage can coexist with an 18-hole golf course. So that's the kind of questions we'll be addressing, and we'll give you our fact base for questions like that. A secondary question is, well, do we have to have 40 acre-feet of storage? If we want an 18-hole golf course, what's the maximum storage that could be provided on the property of the golf course that would be reasonably cost-effective and not be a 40-foot ditch somewhere on the property? So those are the examples of questions through the decision-making process, each of which will have a yes, no, maybe, answer to it, and will flow into a whole series of discussions around alternative land uses for all or portions of that property. So that's the way the actual report and the presentation will flow. We will also have a project work plan in summary form for building out a wetland, either a big wetland or a small wetland, and looking to sell credits if that's the decision you want to go. there are a number of important factors there. One is, how difficult is this? How many steps? We've identified probably 30, and we've just begun, steps that would have to follow. What's the time frame for those steps? We know that this can be an up to 10-year plan, so we need to understand what those work steps are and the plans are. Whose responsibility for each of the work steps? You have ultimate responsibility as the board, but there are responsibility of the wetland builder, which theoretically would be the Stormwater Management Commission, with whomever you hire or utilize as a project manager, with a wetland banker, with legal counsel, with environmental consultants. So we're trying to identify the roles and responsibilities that would need to be put into place in order to make a wetland possible. And then importantly, if there are park district costs, we want to provide, to the degree that we can, a range of expenses for you to consider as part of your evaluation of that particular activity. We will also have a summary of the important findings. We'll have the Gulf financials. We'll have the Glossary of Terms. And very specifically, we'll have very detailed answers to the 17 questions that you've asked us in the remit. And even though you've asked us to finish by the end of June, I've tasked my task force with getting this done by the end of May. So a report to you so we can use June for whatever kind of discussion you would like with us, or whatever you would like the task force to do in terms of gathering information from the community. So I'll let you know through Emily if we're not going to meet that timeline, but right now it looks like the end of May. We will have our initial draft document and hopefully have a meeting with you face-to-face to go over our initial findings. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or appreciate your input and feedback as to how you think the meetings are going. I know many of you have participated. I've done Zoom calls enough that, you know, I'm constantly looking to see who's listening, who's signed in, and especially who's asking questions. So I'll stop there and wait for some questions or comments.
Thank you. And Steve has graciously said not only questions and comments from the board, but also from any of the other participants on the committee meeting tonight. So we'll start off with the commissioners to see if there are any questions or comments from the commissioners first.
I have a couple of questions, if I may. Steve, I haven't, maybe I missed this in your presentation now, but I haven't heard very much about the financial aspect of establishing wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of our big concerns was, you know, there was a headline figure. What was being touted is the amount of money that we could make selling an acre of wetland credits. But at the end of the day, it's what can we really make? And that includes all the costs that go into that aspect of it. To me, that's one of the critical things that we wanted to look at.
Yeah, and you'll get probably, well, maybe not more than you want, but you get a lot of detail on that. So if you think about the potential revenue that, or the potential maximum revenue that could be generated from the entire Park District property, you're looking at a combination of two things. You're multiplying the number of credits, a number of wetland credits that that property can generate. And by the way, that is not the number of acres. An acre doesn't equal a credit. There's a formula in the regulatory schemes that identifies how much of that area is eligible, and that determines how many credits you have. So we'll identify how many credits we believe, or a range of credits that can be generated from that property. Now that's wetland credits. There are stream mitigation credits. So there are different formula for credits of the stream bed. The borders, 100-foot border around a wetland has a different calculation for credits. So we'll give you the detail of what we think one part of the equation is, and that would be the maximum number of credits that could be generated, and give you whatever caveats we have identified and ranges of those numbers. So it's not just here's the acreage, there's a whole calculation methodology that's in place. So that's one. The second one, also critical, is what's the going market rate for a wetland credit? And the number that's been bantied around is $149,500 per credit in the Skokie River watershed. So wetland credits have different market value in different watersheds within Lake County. There's multiple watersheds. The Skokie River watershed happens to be the least supplied and the most in demand. The 149,500 is a number that is real. It is an in lieu number created by the Stormwater Management Commission. So if a developer can't find a wetland credit bank that is willing to sell credits, then that developer can negotiate with the Stormwater Management Commission to buy for cash, make a payment to the Stormwater Management Commission directly in lieu of actually purchasing a credit. That's 149,500. That's where that number comes from. We have, Paul, just begun a sensitivity analysis around not only the price per wetland credit, but the marketability of credits. How variable is the market and how variable is the price tag per credit? All critical things. You'll have an analysis of both pieces of that equation in our final report. It's
Okay, and what about the other side of the equation?
yeah, we'll also have, so thank you. So you get X credits times Y dollars, and you come up with a expected income. You then need to subtract whatever expenses there are. And yeah, there will be attorney's expenses. All of the people I mentioned before, if you have a superintendent or an overseer, if you have an environmental person, if you have a wetland mitigation banker, all of those are costs. And yes, we will give you our best estimate using a series of assumptions. What we'll probably do, again, we've just started talking about this, for sake of not complicating things, we will make an assumption of maximizing wetland credits on the property, and we will completely lay out the proposed economics from that particular scenario with projected range of income and projected expenses by category of expense. And we'll give you ranges because nothing is, specific. We'll also give you question marks if we don't have some. And that would include both short-term and long-term maintenance, which I know are issues that folks have talked about in the past.
Right.
Yeah, we'll spend a lot of time on that.
Now, is the task force, and this may be going beyond what the task force was asked to do, but is the task force looking at the effect on, let's call it a new business model for the park district as a result of this?
Give me more what you mean by a new business model.
Well, I mean, I in looking at what the task force has been doing, and maybe this, if this is not about process, then tell me that, and we'll do it at a different time. But it's, individual items can be approached, individual items can be discussed. You can look at this and say, okay, we can do X number of wetland credits on the area. We can hire an attorney for $500 an hour. We can, but then you got to put it all together.
Yep.
And when all of this is put together, and when you hire a superintendent to look at it, you hire a bank, a mitigation banker, you hire staff, because Noah was just, had in the report tonight how short he is of staff to take care of existing property, let alone 150 acres of new property. which represents more than 50% of the land in the park district. You know, we have to look at putting that all together. What does that mean for the park district? So I don't know if you're.
Yeah, we will look at that
as well.
Yeah, we do.
That's what I
intend to
call the
look-
business model.
Okay, we do intend to look at that business model. I will tell you that the for recurring costs, and this is what we learned as a best practice from some of the entities that have built wetlands in the past, as a best practice, and in some situations required, for example, by the Corps of Engineers, a portion of the sale of credits is used as a permanent funding source to pay for the stream of maintenance that occurs down the road. The Corps is very focused on the durability of the wetland, the fact that this is a forever situation, and wants to make sure that the owner of the property has appropriate funding in place. So we will discuss the options around creating a permanent funding source with some of the proceeds of the sale of credits. So it would do two things. One, it would reduce the ultimate credits available for other uses based on park district needs, but it would also eliminate the necessity to budget on an annual basis. You set the budget, but to pay from other sources the required maintenance and upkeep. So yeah, we'll look at that in a fair amount of detail.
Okay.
Anyone else? Yeah, I'll go ahead.
I was just gonna say thank you for everything you guys are doing. It's unbelievable. I'm so impressed with everything that I've seen and everything that you just shared with us tonight. It's I mean, I can't even, it's such a huge task and such a huge undertaking, and we just want to make sure we're doing it right, and you guys are doing such a great job. So thank you.
And I have to second that.
Yeah. And it's an
I would say-
important, go ahead.
Sorry, the only other thing I would ask is, are there any other resources you need from us to complete the work that you guys are doing?
At this point, no. We had luckily you've appointed a great task force, and the individuals on that task force all bring something, as it turns out, that is mission critical. So we've been able to tap into engineering, to project management, to legal, to environmental. We've been able to tap into all of those resources internally by using our own expertise and our own networks. So right now there may be, I'm sure there will be some support for actually putting a report together, the graphics in a report, for example, and depending on how broadly you want that report disseminated and whether we'll have, big decks and that kind of stuff. But right now, the resources that you provided are sufficient, and hopefully we won't be asking for more. But
and again, we
that's
did
not-
have,
Go ahead.
we did have SMC very generously offer to cover the cost of the V3 analysis. Are you anticipating that one soon?
Yeah, I'm actually, unfortunately, the final report from V3 will be a day or two after our next meeting, but John and I are going to talk to the V3 principal a day or two before, so we'll have a good sense. We'll be able to have some initial findings, hopefully, at our next meeting a week from Tuesday. And then as soon as we get the actual report, we'll post it on the website and certainly discuss it at the following meeting.
Okay. All right, good. For myself, I just kind of want to follow up with what Paul just said too, because for those of you on the commission and anyone outside of this that I've talked to about what the task force is doing and what the park district is looking at with this, I continually refer to this as a business model. Right now, we are in the business model of we've operated a golf course for all these years. If we look at wetlands, and I'm going to use the wetlands instead of the water storage model. It's the wetlands as a business and how that would impact us as a park district. So in kind of supplementing what Paul was just talking about, looking at how this would impact what happens with the park district staff. If we need to bring additional people on board to be able to maintain the wetlands and so forth. I keep using the same verbiage over and over again, but it's really divorcing the whole aspect of the aesthetics of the park, everything else that would go along with changing the golf course into wetlands. What happens with how we operate on a day-to-day basis if we are converted in part or in full into the wetlands.
Yep.
The other thing, Steve, I really would like to ask you to look at in your analysis, and you did touch upon this, is we're stewards for the park district. What we do with our decision now will impact the park district for years to come. We're not in a good business to take risks of any kind. So if this were a different time or a different kind of business model, there would probably be a better risk tolerance, but that's not what we do here at the park district. So as you analyze this, we would greatly appreciate, or I personally would greatly appreciate, having the ability to say, okay, this is the best scenario, the blue sky scenario of what we could possibly do, but also what if it's not as good? What if we don't have the hydrology? What if we have to anticipate that these wetland credits are on the books for a number of years? What kind of impact does that have on the operations of the park district?
Yeah, we've those are all great points, and we've started thinking through some of those. One of the things that V3 will give us is a pretty good sense of the hydric soil that's available. And if you don't have hydric soil, having a wetland makes no sense at all. You just have to move too much dirt, and it doesn't work. So they will help us in the feasibility of wetlands. We'll also be looking at the long-term maintenance components that are part of potentially building a wetland. We'll also look at step-down scenarios. I don't want anyone to give the impression that we're going to look at doing nothing and doing everything. There are a whole bunch of solutions in the middle. I mean, for example, one of the things we've talked about informally already is a different golf experience on the golf course. Whether that's a reconfigured 18-hole golf course to accommodate stormwater storage, or whether it's a 9-hole golf course. We've looked at some golf courses that are actually built into a wetland environment. So if that might be something that might be of interest to the community. We've looked at other options to still maintain a golfing experience, but perhaps a more family golf experience with a par 3 and a pitch and putt and golf lessons. So we'll give a series of options with at least our initial understanding of the financial consequences to the park district, and some risk commentary of which is risky and which isn't. But we will definitely talk about that. We've also talked about ways, if wetlands are the way that this body wants to go, we've talked about ways, and we now know there are ways to accelerate the cash flow from the sale of a credit. So under the core regulations, there's a phased in approach to release of credits for sale in the marketplace. So 20% when you're authorized, and then based on the performance of the plants, which is really interesting to me, based on how well the wetland takes in the environment, how deep the roots are, how fast the plants grow, then more and more credits are released on an annual or semi-annual basis. So we will document what that is, but we also will discuss potential alternatives to deal with what in reality is a newly created asset. So once the Corps or whoever the regulatory body is says this is a wetland, you can now, the clock begins, you can now sell 20% of the credits. In actuality, the entire credit bank is now an asset of the park district. And once you have an asset, you can do things with that asset in, if need be, accelerating revenue flow into the park district, obviously at a price. But and I'm not sure that's in the best interest of the golf course or the community, but we will look at that as well to give you as many options as we can think of.
Okay. As I said, you've got a large task ahead of you to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I think the final thing then is really just and I appreciate the fact that you've gone back to stormwater management at least twice in the questions that you've had as part of your packets. Really to pinpoint the source of funding, because I know that Kurt Wolford had said that he wanted contracting to be done by the end, I believe, of 2024. There's been a lot of discussion as to what SMC will pay for, what they're not going to be able to pay for, and so forth. But to really pinpoint what the funding source is, if this is a grant, if this is something else, we're very familiar with that. We understand stop dates, and we also, to know the terminology as to what is permissible under the grant to be paid for and what they have as some discretionary use of the funds. So to have that information relayed to us so that we have a better knowledge as to there's got to be a cap somewhere, and we want to make sure that we work within that cap, we work within that timing, and that no one is surprised or disappointed by not making benchmarks or timing. We want to make sure that we understand that as well.
Yeah, and if you've read through the series of questions and answers with the stormwater management folks, those questions were specifically designed to begin, and not to begin, but to create a concept of what the maximum amount of work that SMC will do. How many acres would they convert into a wetland environment? What would they do in terms of stormwater storage? We've got a really good handle on that. We have a pretty good handle on where their funding comes from. The money that has been allocated for stormwater management in Lake County, a goodly part of that, which is from the Build Illinois program, not federal funding, but a state funding. We also understand the vagaries of that funding and recognize that nothing will happen in terms of changing land use until you, the Park District, and the Stormwater Management Commission negotiate and sign an intergovernmental agreement where all of those things that you just mentioned are specified. So, there needs to be a bunch of discussion. If you decide to move forward at all, there needs to be discussion about whatever the proposed solution is and an IGA created before any money is actually put into SMC's pocket and before there's a shovel full of dirt that's turned over on the golf course. So we're trying to lay the foundation for that IGA right away up front so that you can get that done. If you decide to do that, get that done quickly.
Yeah, I've heard it mentioned several times, and I appreciate what you're talking about, because you said there's a big difference between being a good neighbor and working with the Stormwater Management Commission to be able to look at the stormwater management issue versus what we're doing as the financial approach, which you're looking at as to the financial impact of what this is going to be. So again, you've got a big task and you're managing it well. Thank you.
And as my task force likes to say, we'll be done in 3 more months. It's been a lot of work. It has also been a rewarding, I think, work for all of us as we understand what the opportunity is and then understand how hard it will be to get to the right solution, the solution that's right for the greater Lake Bluff community. So it's we're honored in a way to be part of that.
I appreciate you saying that. You're right. There's a very steep learning curve, and I bet you all feel like you can take on. I didn't realize there was a job such as a wetland banker before this, but add this to the list of interesting jobs that you could have.
I didn't know there was a Stormwater Management Commission. That was news to me. So we learn all the time. That's what makes this an interesting thing to do.
I'd like to ask anything more from the commissioners before we open this up to the folks listening in and attending the meeting. Okay, then turning it over, Steve, if you'll entertain any questions from anyone who's listening in tonight. Jeff, are there any raised hands?
Nope, there are none.
You have satisfied every question and every need, Steve. Thank you.
Either that or people have just fallen asleep because of the, you know, the
think so.
definitions that I've been trying to give. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We'll come back whenever you want us, and we look forward to presenting our draft findings sometime in May. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Steve.
Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
And as because Steve alluded to this with possibly seeing each other in person, we'll go to the next item on our agenda, which is in-person meetings. In the conversation that I had with John, we're still looking at meetings could possibly be held in person starting April 1st. Is that the directive?
April 2nd is when the current disaster declaration is set to expire. I checked with our attorney on Friday to expect that the governor probably will extend that at the end of the month. If, you know, so that's probably coming, but that's not guaranteed yet. And so that allows for that, you know, to have the opportunity to do the Zoom meetings. But I think that like the village board has gone back to in-person meetings. I think with all of their meetings and commissions, if I'm not mistaken. And so I think that's you know, that's going to be up to the board to discuss. Even if they do extend it, you know, you as the president can submit the letter to either keep going on Zoom or to feel it's safe to start meeting in person.
And as we've spoken about before, keep in mind that the decision that's made to meet in public, meet together in person, would apply to all the committees as well. So this decision would go through the whole gamut of all of the meetings that we have. We all know the wonderful convenience of being able to Zoom in at a new meeting and be able to sneak your lunch as much as you can while you're having the meeting, and then Zoom off after that and not have to drive to and from a meeting site or a meeting late at night and so forth. But the convenience factor is different from the public health factor, and that's the whole reason for either having a continuance of Zoom meetings or meeting in person. So I'll open it up to everybody as to any comments or questions regarding this.
I think we had discussed this the last time as well, that we're looking at, I mean, at some point, we all hope that the governor's declaration expires. You know, I want to get past COVID. I'm sure we all do. But that especially for the task force, that it seems like it's particularly important now to keep the meetings on Zoom so that traveling, you know, people on the task force who have been traveling around different places would be able to fully participate. And that's one good reason to, you know, keep doing it with Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. If the task force is part of this decision, which sounds like it definitely is, then I think we need to keep it as convenient as possible for the task force members, which will only be a couple of more months anyway. So
at the last meeting, the task force said they were fine with going in person. If we went to in person, they would follow us and they would be fine.
okay.
Just something I noted, and I don't know if this would even ever work for us, but so the village board is back in in-person meetings, as you mentioned, starting March 1st. So tonight, they have their committee of the whole meeting at 6 p.m. and then they have their village board meeting at 7 p.m., which I thought was really interesting because it seems like we've always done this on opposite weeks, but just something else to think about or consider too.
Okay. All right, so
I also believe the high school does it that way too.
the
That they
committee
do
of the whole
their-
meeting.
right before their meeting.
Yeah.
I think it's actually a more efficient way. I think it's something we should look into too. For just, not just us, but also for staffing.
Okay. So doing a committee of the whole prior to the board meeting, and that gives you the ability then to be able to have those kinds of conversations before we go into the board meeting regarding the topics that will be on the agenda for that evening. Okay, well, we're meeting as policy review a little bit later this week, so that's one of the topics that we can put in there as well. All right, anything further on this? So if I'm hearing those who vocalized and those who are just nodding along, when the mandate is lifted for this, then we would go back to in-person meetings.
Well, then we have to.
Then we have to, but unless there's a public health exception, it sounds like. Is that correct, John?
For an individual, yeah.
For individual, right.
Yeah,
I just want to say, I think the task force, when I brought it up at the meeting, they were more in favor of going back to in-person, feeling that they would have a better ability to converse with amongst each other in person versus via Zoom. But they again said they would do whatever we do. I mean, that's part of, they would follow the board, but just to let you know, they were, and I, just so you know, I would prefer to be in person too. I like to be around people and just kind of, I feel like I can understand and kind of grasp. It's hard to like see everybody on Zoom and kind of like focus in, and it's just kind of nice to be able to do that when you're in person. So just to let you know, I would want to go to in person as soon as possible. That's my vote.
Well,
John, is there any restriction on the task force deciding to meet in person?
well, according to the attorney, he said that if, the president feels that it's part of the disaster, it was about safety, for the people attending the meetings, that if it was felt that, that was a good reason for the board, then it applied to all of the board's committees.
So it's kind of a either or.
Yes, as they explained it, it's the all or nothing, I guess.
I just feel like when I've been subbing, when I had to do Zoom substituting versus in person, it's a whole different ballgame. And I think it's the same thing with meetings. When you're on Zoom versus in person, I just think there's something different about it that's missing when you're on Zoom.
I agree with that. And I think if the task force has said they want to meet in person, when we lose that rationale, then I have to agree with Emily that I think in-person meetings are always better.
well, it looks like then as of Friday of this week, we will then be doing in-person meetings. So everybody has to have appropriate pants and footwear for meetings after this. We'll no longer be on Zoom.
Check our wardrobes.
Okay. Good. All right. Next, page 45 of your packets, the security cameras at the fitness center and the park maintenance building, especially with the requirement to have 90 days of footage. John, do you want to speak to that, or?
Sure. I'll go ahead and start, and then I'll turn it over to Noah.
Noah?
It'll work. This was a regular budgeted item for this year, and project that's been talked about with staff. There was two different projects, and Noah can talk about it a little bit more in detail, that were going to be as part of two different areas with the cameras. There was a estimate that the contractor had given the staff early on that was kind of used to create the budget. However, they failed to indicate that the there was going to be a needed upgrade in the hardware for the system to accommodate the new camera. So that kind of changed it a little bit. So Noah, if you want to just give a little bit of background on this.
Sure. Excuse me. So yeah, we reached out to our contractor in the springtime following our original budget estimate. And he let us know that in order to accommodate the 3 cameras we wanted to put upstairs, we needed more storage, which added a cost on. And if we wanted additionally 3 cameras, we needed a bigger switch to handle it because we're almost completely maxed out how many cameras our current system can hold. So there was some additional costs that came up in a follow-up conversation. So staff felt, Jim and I talked, the best usage of the funding that we had would be to put the security cameras at the recreation center and then budget for next year for the park maintenance garage so that we didn't go over budget.
And I
Sue?
just, yeah, how does, the word compliance has me a little concerned. It sounds like we're going to ignore that compliance issue and go do the other work, or am I misunderstanding? Or is that not really a regulatory compliance?
So
Well, go ahead. I think what Noah's probably gonna say, the compliance is if you're keeping footage, you have to keep it 90 days. It's not necessarily where you have to have cameras. So if we don't put the cameras, we're not required to have them at park maintenance, the ones we wouldn't be doing. So that doesn't put us out of compliance. But we have to have the upgrade in the hardware in order to stay in that, well, what's being called compliance, keep that 90 days of recorded video.
Okay.
All right, anything further? Would someone like to make a motion, please? And this would be a motion to approve the estimate in the amount of $8,825 from Griffin Systems for camera system upgrades at the Blair Recreation Center.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please, Marcia.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore,
Yes.
Commissioner Reader,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Beeler.
Yes. Old habits die hard.
Can't forget about me, Marcia, huh?
Next, we have the Sunrise Beach Timber Step and Retaining Wall Project. One of the items that the Parks and Beach Committee discussed earlier this year and asked to have included in the capital budget were 2 items down at the beach. One is the stairs that are heading down to the northern part of the beach. These are the timber and gravel stairs that have kind of a swale to them that retain water. They're a little bit dicey in the winter with trying to head down there because they retain ice as well. So the project to upgrade those, improve those, was approved by Parks and Beach and then part of our capital budget. The second part of it would be the retaining wall that's necessary for the native plantings that are in the middle cove of our beach. As you come off of the ramp right into the beach, you see some grasses and so forth. That wall is starting to collapse. So these are 2 projects, and on a very fortunate note, the Friends of Lake Bluff Parks, and I think Nikki did mention this before, have offered to use the funds that they have raised specifically for the beach to help underwrite the costs of this. So this would be, because they've raised so much, they feel at this point not using that money is not in their best interest. They want to be able to use the money and help underwrite these costs to help improve the beach. So at this point, John, I'll turn it over to you and to Noah too about the bids that you have for these works.
Yes, so we conducted a public bid opening. Only 2 bids were received. The combined low bidder was for the 2 projects is Guy Scopoletti. Landscaping, who has done some work in the past for the Park District. It's just a little bit over budget. I think the budget was maybe 45,250 or something like that, and it came in, as you can see, at $47,109.14. But they are telling us that they can complete the project, both projects, before the opening of the beach for Memorial Day, and so staff's recommendation was to award the bid to the lowest bidder and allow us to move forward with the project, and then again we would I guess work with Friends Foundation as far as reimbursement after the project is finished. Noah, did you have anything you wanted to add at this time about the project or the bids?
I do not. Nope.
And especially with the next agenda item that we'll have coming up with the North Shore Water Reclamation, having the accessibility to the North Cove of the beach is going to be important for us. So having this done sooner rather than later is probably to our benefit. And the work that they'll be doing down there will not impact this retaining wall or those native plantings. It will not affect that in any way. So taking these projects under now is probably to our a better thing than waiting and putting them off to any time. So any questions or comments from anyone on the board?
This is for the stairway to the central beach, the north end of the central beach, correct?
Yes, from the bottom of the staircase off of the roadway all the way down to the north shelter.
North end of the central cell. Yeah.
Right.
And that last stretch of the pathway, which is to the dog beach, the
Right.
former dog beach, but to the down to that north shelter itself.
Okay. Anything further? No? Okay.
Now, what are these? Alternate A was to provide any alternate means or method to accomplish the task.
Yeah, and Noah can probably explain that a little bit better.
Yep, I wanted the contractors to provide any other insight that they may have come up with, whether it was a second row of timbers to provide more stabilization, a different material if they felt that, anything that they felt would be a betterment to this project, make it last longer, and still come in with a decent price point. So I was looking for recommendations from them who just based on the project itself.
And Noah, what was that for the $7,200 an alternate A from Guy Scopolati? What was that?
That was to add a second timber below the first timber on each step to go a little bit lower underneath the soil or the gravel to provide a second layer of timbering.
And you have information here as well that if the Park District purchases the timbers like we did for the beach accessibility project, there could be some savings put into there as well, right?
A little bit, yes.
Okay.
That was written in there. We're not recommending it at this point. We're recommending that it just be part of that the contractor be responsible for that.
Okay.
It seems to me when we originally talked about these that if I remember correctly, and I may not, Cliff was saying something about drainage and that the drainage needs to be adjusted so it's not running over the stairs. Is that included in this project?
It is. It is. It includes a swale to be made on the west side of that, and all the stairs will level but slightly tipped so that drainage swale.
Thanks.
Yeah, a lot of those steps are actually tipped the wrong way, so it's eroding over the bluff, so they'll be tipped back towards the bluff, and then they'll create the swale for it to drain properly.
Excellent. Thanks.
Okay, so we're ending up just looking at the base bids for both.
Yes, that keeps us closer to our budget. Ideally, the one alternate would be nice to have, but that would certainly push us over the budget. What the Friends had approved was up to what was in our budget, that 45, and then 5% over that if it was to go over the bids. Because, the bids hadn't come in yet. So to stay within, of course, it would be nice to have that, but to stay within budget, we're just recommending the 2 base bids.
So the Friends is willing to finance this to $45,000 plus 5%.
5% over, yeah.
So 47,250. And the bid is 47,109. So any overage, is that right?
That's correct.
I did
That
not
would-
use my calculator, Emily. I want you to know that. So essentially, any overage on the project, we get the bill.
Yes,
Not
if
the
we
Friends.
chose that alternate, the park district would pay that $7,200 for the alternate.
Why are the Friends limiting it to 45,000 plus 5%? They've raised like 80,000 something for the beach.
They're talking about other, other funding other projects as well. That was just the estimate of, that was in our budget. So they agreed to that, that budgeted number plus 5% if it goes over.
Yeah, I think if there were major issues, we could go back and, ask for more, but it just seemed like that was a reasonable thing for, us in the meeting to agree on. That number seemed reasonable based on, early bids and budgeting.
But we could go back to them and say this is run $5,000 over budget.
I think so. I think they'd be reasonable if we, explained what was going on. I can't say for sure.
Yeah, the only thing I can guarantee in this meeting before you take a vote is the 45 plus 5%.
Right, right.
But I think
Because
Paul's
it will
right.
go over.
Yeah, I think Paul's right. I think we should always ask, just like we did with V3, we should ask, or SMC, we should ask the Friends of Foundation. If it goes over, we shouldn't take it. We should ask them to pay for it because I remember, Nikki, you stating that they wanted to use that money.
Yep.
So, but if something happens, let's ask them before we pay for it out of our pocket.
I think that makes sense.
Should we ask them now?
Well,
Are you asked?
You want me to call John Hirsch?
Any delay, I would imagine, would not put us on a time frame to get this done by Memorial Day.
I agree.
yeah, in speaking to John about this, John Hirsch, he said that the Friends are truly motivated to make sure that the money goes to beach projects so that people feel that when they're making these kinds of donations, when they're doing this kind of fundraising, they see quicker turnover with regard to what happens to improve our beach. So I hear you, Paul, on saying, what if we go a little bit over? Are we going to be on the hook for that? Or can we go back out and ask the Friends with open hands on this? We can talk to them about it, but it's not a huge amount. And we did have this budgeted for ourselves as well as part of the capital. So this is a very kind thing that they're going to be offering to pick up this cost. And they work hard for their fundraising. So, anything further? All right, can I ask someone please to make a motion to approve the base bids for the projects for both of these from Guy Scopoletti to furnish the materials, perform repairs and renovations of the timber steps to the North Beach and the retaining wall in the total amount of $47,109.14.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore,
Yes.
Commissioner Reader,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
yes.
President Beeler.
Yes. Moving on with our agenda, community engagement proposal, which you'll find on page 50 of your packet. As there has been a lot, and maybe a lot's not even the right phrase, but there's been so much interest from so many different parts of the Lake Bluff community regarding the proposal with the golf course and the wetlands. The board, in talking to everybody here, felt that it was appropriate at this time to engage a public relations firm to be able to talk about what's going on with this project and also to engage the community in what's happening in the conversation about this project. So to that end, I was there for part of the conversation with John and with Nikki Walsh to talk to the Lakota group with Scott Freres. And really the overall goal of this would be to have community input, community involvement, and also that would be the first part about it. And the second part would be then once the task force has completed their analysis, how that information is brought forward into our community, our Lake Bluff Park District community as well. On a personal note, I think it's extremely important because listening again to what Steve is going through with the intricacies of everything that's involved with the depth that they're going to have in their analysis. Those of you that I see on those task force meetings are the ones who go back later and listen to those reports. There's a lot of information that's going on. And I really like the fact that Steve was talking about having reliable, intelligent, and valuable resource that's going to be put out there. Our job as commissioners is to bring this out to the community, hear from the community where they are right now with regard to this proposal, this project, and then secondarily, when that information, that analysis is ready, to be able to bring that out to the community as well. I'd like as much as possible to have everybody hear the same information, listen to the same information coming in as well, so that we have as much of a consensus as we can as to what's going on with this project. So with that, I'm going to ask Nikki and John as well to talk about what they had with the conversation they had with the Lakota group as the PR prospect on this.
Yeah, so, everything Jennifer said, we engaged these guys initially because, John had found them through Lake Forest Rec, just looking for, and it makes me think back to what Steve Krause just said. We want to, what the same, thing that they're doing, we want to show that, we're fact finders and a source of truth. We want to share everything that they're doing. Right now, they've got their packets online and they've got their meetings online, but a lot of people aren't wading through, all of the packets and, listening to, 2 hours of, meetings at a time. And so just finding ways to put this out, presumably some sort of a microsite, trying to, have a digital receptacle for all of this information that people can go to easily, look at graphs, look at, things easy, so they can make it all pretty for us, as well as, help us kind of manage the community input, help us with, like a community forum a couple times, something like that, just to try to, make sure that we're hearing from as many people as possible on this, which, is what everyone has asked for. It should not be just our decision as a board, it should be the community's decision. And so we felt this was a good way to, kind of organize everyone together, but we need help to do it. And they've had a lot of success in Lake Forest. And so we thought that it might work here as well. The guy seemed great on the call. He had a lot of interesting information. The one thing I would say from the proposal is I would like to see, kind of a bulleted list of exactly what they were going to do. I think sometimes in these statement of work writings, things get a little lost. And I thought it was kind of, kludgy the way everything was written in there. And I'd like to just see, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a meeting, approximately this date. We're going to do a meeting approximately this date. Here are our exact deliverables. I think that's what it was missing, basically, is a list of deliverables. So I don't know how everyone else felt after looking at the proposal, but the call was great. The guy seemed great. That's That's about it. We had talked to him for a long time. John, was it almost 90 minutes?
I think you're right. It was an
Yeah.
hour and a half.
Yeah.
Oh.
And this is something that, again, I feel is imperative for us to do because there's been so much discussion within the community. And hey, we live in Lake Bluff. We know that people talk and there's a lot of information that's going around, and we want to make sure that we are getting the information that's out there, that's reliable, that's dependable, that's trustworthy. And we're also listening to people's concerns and people's view on what is happening within the community and making sure that we answer those kinds of questions as they come across. One of the things I did want to point out was just within the proposal on page 52, just to make sure that we all are kind of on the same page. The CODA group kind of summarized everything, and it looks like each one of those bullet points are different variables. They should be an or as to what we're looking at. Planned and budgeted multi-year reinvestment in the golf course and clubhouse and facilities operated contract, or vacate the golf club, or vacate a portion of the golf course, or vacate a portion of the golf course for nature-based facilities. So those are some of the things that, again, I'm sure in the discussion with Nikki and with John, Scott Ferris came away with, a certain oversight or a certain amount of information that he had. He looked at different materials and so forth. But I agree with Nikki, this could be refined, honed a great deal. But I think the important overview is that we need someone to assist us in, I'm going to call it messaging, making sure that the message is appropriately out there in the community, listening, and then making sure that when the task force has completed their analysis, making sure that that message is out there so that you don't have to sift through thousands of pages of documents and watch all the videos.
And I think just having a third party, to show that we are transparent, we're going to give this person everything. This person's going to share everything with the community. There's nothing we want to hide. If we're not doing a good job of getting it out there, we need to be doing a better job of getting it out there. And so let's put it out there as, concise and pretty as we can, where everyone can access it.
And so that there's no confusion, yes, we did contract with Beyond the Basics before. That was with a different view, because that was really looking forward to the beach and the beach erosion project. This is not the same task that we would have in front of us with engaging a PR firm. This is really looking toward the proposal that's in front of us with the golf course and with the wetlands project. Okay, so with that overview, opening up to commissioners as to questions and comments.
Nikki, I wholeheartedly agree with your point that it just needs to be a little bit more fleshed out and outlined. There's a lot of, I don't want to say buzzwords, but a lot of verbiage associated with, whatever, how many 10 different tasks here? I mean, over the course of 60, 75 days. I mean, it's a large scope of work. I think my first question is kind of about the timeline. Did you guys discuss at all kind of like their initial meetings with, I see some like workshops and stuff like here that are going on while the task force is still going on? Did you talk about like how those two kind of work together? Like, I'm just kind of curious, like why we necessarily have these workshops when the task force is still kind of working to get their findings.
I agree. We didn't discuss a timeline, I don't think, on those. We just said, that we thought a couple of them would be great. And I don't remember discussing any sort of dates with him.
Okay. But no, I think having a digital strategy for this is going to be awesome because as we heard earlier, there are so many different open items that the task force needs to come back with, and it's a lot for any one person to really take in and synthesize. So any way that we can work with somebody to communicate those findings in a more succinct manner, I think is going to be very helpful.
Do we think that I have a couple things. Do we think that this format and having two workshops, and again, I agree with you, Scott, on the timing of the workshops and exactly what's in them, will that be sufficient for us to gather the information from the desires of the community to make a decision. If we're not, I've said all along, I would prefer to go to a referendum on something like this if we get to the point where we have to decide if we want a golf course or not. But if that doesn't occur, is this going to be enough information for us to be able to make that decision? I can't tell from looking at the proposal. So that's the first question. And the second is more of a request. Can we remove, I think it may be a typo, John. I'm not sure why the language of artificial turf is in there, but I personally would like to see that removed. It's a very controversial topic and we don't need another controversy. Can we address that later if it comes to it and remove that language?
That is a typo from another project.
Thank
That
you.
one needs to be removed.
Stuart, are you talking about the synthetic turf on bullet point number 4 on page 52?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that also. I was going to ask about that. Okay.
What's the matter? You don't like young girls getting cancer from synthetic turf fields while they're
Lakota
playing?
may be doing a great group, but there is a lot of controversy on the web about
There sure is a lot.
synthetic, and we just don't need to add more controversy.
Sure is a lot. So this is a project that would start essentially now.
It would have to, especially with what Steve just gave us with an update as to how quickly their task force is moving ahead. Yes. Get rolling on this as soon as possible.
Yeah, like we were thinking even just like their key takeaways that they have from every meeting to start, getting those up, just different things in a place that's all in one place, that's easy for people to access and read and make it look pretty nice.
So I would say this is an excellent and necessary resource for us to communicate effectively with the public, especially with the public meetings scheduled, appropriately once we have the task force findings back. So thank you for doing the research on this.
All right, so I'm hearing that to go back to the Lakota group, refine the proposal that they have for us, especially looking at the timing that we need to incorporate, given what's happening with the task force and especially with community input, with the workshops and so forth, getting this digital presence there, refining the time frame, and then again, there were a number of ancillary services that they talked about outside the scope of what they would propose. But they're looking at a project total of approximately $30,960.
I think we could even, kind of go back and say, okay, so by all this, do you mean this? Bullet, put together a digital microsite. Bullet, host 2 meetings, on dates TBD after our task force is done, with the community, like just that we could go back and, do that pretty easily and then have them agree to it. We're taking this from what you sent us.
Okay, that's good. I mean, I really like the fact in some of these points, looking at a live or videotape presentation of the workshop events, being able to look at the concept plans through that. I think a lot of these things are just, at the end of all of this, I want people to feel no one should come back and say, how come I didn't know this? Because we should just have everything out there so that anybody has it accessible and we have some place to be able to direct folks if they want to go into this deep dive or if they just want to skim the surface and get, top level bullet points on things, but to be able to have all of that accessible. All right, any other things from the board on this? Okay, so it looks like Nikki and John to go back to the Lakota group about refining this proposal to us and looking at perhaps a more accelerated time frame than what they have in here. And then we can bring this back, and if we do need to have a special meeting to be able to vote on this, we'll slate that as necessary. She asked with a question mark, but I'm seeing a lot of yeses on this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Good, we'll do that.
Can we move to approve the proposal subject to expected revisions?
That would be better for us. Keep this moving and try to, especially if we're going to try to accelerate the timeline for them. I think the sooner that we can give them the approval and have them move forward, the better.
Okay, is that moved by you, Paul?
Yes,
Okay,
I move to approve the proposal from the Lakota Group in the amount of $38,960, subject to expected further revisions.
I'll second.
roll call?
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes,
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore,
Yes.
Commissioner Reader,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Beeler.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, on that.
Please send me, just to finish that off, please send me anything that you have, like anything that you want to, make sure that we include in, when we recommunicate with them. That would be really helpful.
North Shore Water Reclamation District project update. It has been voted on and approved in terms of their financing. We are looking at a project that's going to take anywhere between 18 to 24 months, starting in October. Is that still the targeted date, Jen, of 2022? Okay. And so if you could give us a quick update as to what you understand from the project so far.
The Board of Trustees for the North Shore Water Reclamation District did approve the financing. They're moving forward. The primary project is installing a 1 million gallon basin, a storage basin, to accommodate overflows and avoid overflows that would go into the lake. With that, they're gonna remove the yacht club facilities and then rebuild those. They're working with the yacht club board right now, and who I believe has an architect or a landscape architect that they're working on some designs for. They're going to improve the facade of the building itself, the enclosure for the generator, as well as improving the landscaping, and I believe they are also resurfacing the parking lot as well as the roadway when they do this project. And one of the interesting things at this point, they are hoping to also include some public restrooms on the front of the building. That is something that the Park District has been interested in for some time, and we've been talking to them about. We would be able to get rid of the porta potties and save the money on those, and also not have those taking up the extra space down there if that happens. So that would be a very nice improvement. And we're talking about an October starting time in 2022, and then they feel that they'll be substantially completed by spring of 24. So by the time that we'd be getting ready to open up for that beach season, they might have a little bit of landscaping work left to finish up, but they feel that the project, barring any large delays, would be substantially finished. So that means one entire beach season for the Park District would be affected by this project in 23. And so it's going to be definitely a difficult year for the beach operation. We'll lose the usage of the South Beach, the South Shelter, and the yacht club. The racks will be displaced. The boats will have to be removed. We don't have room to accommodate those elsewhere on the beach. So I know they're looking into different options. We've discussed some different options, trying to help find those storage for those boat owners, maybe off-site, if they can be held somewhere else. And for that summer, I know that the Yacht Club has been in contact with Lake Forest to accommodate some, but it's not very many boats down there. And we're looking at some options, but it is possible we may not have the sailing camp for one summer. We're looking at options, and we're talking to some of our neighbors, but that is a possibility. I know it's a ways away, but we're working on those plans now for next summer to see if there are other ways that we can accommodate them. But certainly we'll do that. And that is, I think, about all I had as far as a brief summary, unless there's any questions.
And so what we're looking at this point is we're going to have obviously some consolidation between our different subcommittees with finance, with facilities, with parks and beach, because of the impact this is going to have as a total on our park district for the next year. I know that Jim and Noah are already looking at, what's going to happen with controlling beach usage and how we're going to look at folks coming down to the beach and directing them appropriately, because there's going to be construction traffic and there's going to be the same amount of people, we hope, if it's a good weather season, coming down there. But how can we accommodate that kind of number of people going down and trying to use the beach during the summer, as well as how that financial impact is going to hit us from perhaps not having as many people use the beach, not having the yacht club with the sailing lessons and so forth. And then finally, also to try to look at, we're going to have a wholesale of the beach that's, cove. I keep trying to remind myself of the appropriate language that I need to use, the cove of the beach, the South Beach, not having that accessible to us for the summer. What, if anything, we can do as to any part of the erosion project, if the timing is even in the stars for us for this. So we'll keep working on all of this, but it's accelerated by a year. I went back and looked at notes. It was originally a 2023 project, and surprised it's going to be on us as of this fall.
Has the yacht club asked, or has anyone thought about, is there any opportunity, like if someone were to trailer down their sailboat, can it be launched from the kind of central main beach, just to keep people out on the water? Is there anything like that that could be done? Is that allowed?
Well, they have not asked to do that specifically, but we have discussed that at the staff level to see would that be a possibility, and just trying to help, accommodate. It's going to be a difficult, challenging summer, for the beach and, for the operation for the yacht club, itself. But and I'll let Jim talk about this as well. But I think that, our perspective is that it's probably not going to be something that we're able to accommodate is trailering the boats down safely and launching them, in what's going to be a limited and pretty busy area. And then they're going to, the trailers take up room when they're down there, and the safety issue of, back and forth on the beach. Jim, maybe you can touch on a few of the other things involved with that discussion.
Yeah, actually, John and I had this conversation this morning, trying to see if that would be an option. I think it would be extremely challenging working the beach the 9 years with staff, not knowing. It's kind of hard to say how are they going to stage all of their machinery, and what is that going to look like when you're going to be bringing down these cars with trailers and trying to turn things around. You could have an emergency situation where you need to bring EMS down and things get clogged on that road. So I think dragging a trailer across the beach where we're limited between Middle Beach and North Beach, and where people are going to be sitting in the sand, I think it's going to be extremely crowded and difficult. We would need to make a decision whether we have a dog area or not, because right now that's where we have relocated
Right.
part of the dog beach. So are we, if we decide, well, okay, then we'll remove that. So that way we can have a safe zone to launch boats. For those that are familiar with South Beach, that buoy system we put in there, that was about 2016 when we put that in. Is that right, Noah?
That sounds accurate, yes.
Yeah, we did that for the safety of the swimmers at South Beach because they like that beach because it's so secluded. And then everybody assumed South Beach used to be a boating beach. Well, that's where they would, do the junior sailing program and the Lake Bluff Yacht Club. So I think I don't think we have an answer today. I think we have to look to see first what that staging area is going to look like. If we could even do a turnaround with a sunfish boat in a car, in a trailer. I think it's a wait and see.
Yeah. As a member of the Lake Bluff Yacht Club, and I will say I'm not a sailor, I'm a dining member only. They've already published information, questions about what's going to happen, and they put it back onto the park district to say that we haven't issued anything at this point, as to what will happen with with using the beach for launching during the construction. So they're waiting on us.
But we're checking into seeing if Lake Forest Beach will let us use their beach, right?
I believe they said that they would only be able to accommodate maybe an extra 15 boats. Does that sound right, Noah? I think that was told in the one meeting that we had.
Right.
So they were going to have pretty limited, capacity to take on more boats. I didn't know what other, if they're looking at other communities as well. But that's something that the yacht club's working on. Again, for the storage, we haven't, or the launching at our beach, that would be, the problem is right now that the boats are down there, so they don't have to take cars and trailers down there much. It happens from time to time, but it doesn't happen a lot. In this case, all the boats would be removed. So every time they wanted to use it, they would have to take a car and trailer down there. And so, we really feel that's going to be a safety issue, just safety going down and turning around, but also, potentially causing that, an issue for concern with the ambulances or fire truck or whatever needing access. So we do need to find out a little bit more from North Shore, what's going to, what sort of area will be available at the bottom of the roadway. But I believe most all of the parking lot is going to come up, with this project and will not be accessible during the project itself.
I was thinking, I was asking about reciprocating, resident membership for the beach for everyone. So because it's going to be impacting our beach, so that we could use their beach, not just, because they have a ramp that you could take your boat down there to. On the left side, it's just for boaters. Are we talking about asking, are we talking them to let our community use their beach at the same rate that they charge their the Lake Forest folks?
Yes.
Are we asking them that?
We've discussed that at the staff level in exploring that. Jim, there were some things that were or were not included for the beach that's in the current IGA?
Currently, we do not share resident rates for beach.
Right, so can we ask them to have residence rates for the 2023 year?
Yes, we could ask them, and we have some time. When is that IGA up for renewal? That might was that a 2-year agreement?
That was a 2-year agreement, but that could always be adjusted.
Yeah, amended. Okay, so we have
amended, yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely explore that to try to help lessen the blow for next summer by providing perhaps some other opportunities for our residents and working with them as and then we would offer that to them if they, had a similar situation in the future.
And there was an ask as well for the updated plans for what the project will look like. But we've heard they're still using the plans from about 10 years or so back. They're working with architects. We'll get new plans as they are developed.
Yes, I did ask for those last week, and I was sent the same, I think they're stamped either 2010 or 2008 plans that they've been using for a long time. They said they're in the process of updating those right now and working with an engineer, but they're not ready for distribution.
Okay. So what I'd like us is the Park District to do as much as possible. Obviously, this is an agreement that's going to be between the village and between North Shore Water Reclamation with all the permitting, with all of the other aspects that are going to go on, because that is village land down there. It's not Park District land, but as I keep saying, we should have in some way even some small chair and some small voice at the table with this, because we are going to be impacted so greatly by it. And when it comes down to it on a day-to-day basis, we're the ones that are the caretakers of the beach, with all of the sand replenishment, with everything else that goes on. And it's our community folks that are going to be down there using that beach. So I'd like to be involved as much as possible as these plans go forward with North Shore Water Reclamation and with the village as to how things will look, timing, everything else that's going to go on with this.
We definitely discussed, with the executive director from the North Shore District that, we would do joint communication to really try to get the word out to all of our residents that are going to be impacted, when the project starts, to really communicate the timelines and what's going to be involved with that. So hopefully we can, try to, again, just engage the community and make sure that the information is shared with the community so they know how it's going to be impacted.
Okay, good. Anything else? All right, and under new business and action items, final item is the finance position update.
Yes, we've had conducted some interviews, second rounds of interviews, made an offer with one of our candidates who has accepted the position, and they are going through the background check, the drug screen, the normal stuff that we do for employees. And if everything checks out as it looks like it's going to, they will be starting on April 7th. So that's some good news for us, that we'll be getting that position filled and getting somebody on board and helping us get back on track with our, keeping our finances on track.
Okay. All right, moving on, we have community comments, and I will open this up if there's anyone from our attendees who wants to make any comment about the agendas, the items that we discussed this evening. I'm seeing Jeff shake his head, so we'll go on from there. Correspondence, I would just like to put it to everyone out there. There have been a number of folks that have written very heartfelt, emotional, and really impactful emails regarding what they feel about the Park District. And I appreciate everyone who is taking the time to write in. That's one of the items that we'd like to be able to talk about with the policy meeting that's going to come up this week, because we don't include these emails as part of our packet for communication. But again, this is a way that people are vocalizing what they're feeling, what they're thinking at this point, and we'll see if that's going to be something we could include, or if it's reasonable to include that as part of our packet. But again, just a thank you to everybody who's taking that time and sharing their personal experiences about every aspect of the Park District and being a Lake Bluff resident through all these years. So thank you to that. All right. And the last thing is a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore,
Yes.
Commissioner Reader,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yep.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Beeler.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Bye.